Hello, everyone. Welcome to the meeting today for the Coalition Against Hate and Bias. Before we begin, I would like to give a land acknowledgement. My name is Sung Cho, he, him, from the Office of Equity and Social Justice. Let us acknowledge that we are on the unceded ancestral lands of the Duwamish and the Coast Salish, Seattle's first people, who give us access to our water and land. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe by remembering what this country was built on, a nation erected alongside coordinated efforts to make us forget. No amount of rationalizing, intrusion, extermination efforts, control, relocation, violation of treaty rights, and denial can erase what was done to Native people. We acknowledge their historical connection to this land. We make visible that which this government has intentionally tried to make us forget, their enduring presence, their story. Let us lift up the resilient spirit of the Duwamish people that are still here, continuing to honor and bring to light their ancient heritage. Let that lifting inspire us to continue to fight, to call out the injustices that this country was founded on, and change the inequities that continues to exist. Thank you. We have a special guest today joining us. Anita Whitfield has been the Equity and Inclusion Officer, Equity and Social Justice Managing Director for Metro Transit. She has held several key roles in her King County career, including Human Resource Director for more than 10 years, Manager of the Licensing and Regulatory Services Division, and Acting Assistant General Manager of the Employee Services at Metro. Anita leads our equity and social justice strategy and oversees the Office of Equity and Social Justice. As a Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer for King County, she works across all of King County functions to ensure that we're doing everything we can to push our ESJ agenda in all of our operations, policy, and planning, budgets, community engagement, communications, and more. It is my honor to work with Anita and have her leadership as we work together to undo institutional racism. Anita.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Welcome everybody to this webinar. I appreciate your time and your being here. Given that very kind introduction, I will skip some of my own introductory comments and jump to the meat of what I'd like to say to open us up for this important session today. I would say, though, that in addition to being recently appointed to the Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer position for King County by King County Executive Dow Constantine, and having the honor of being the director for these brilliant people who make up our Office of Equity and Social Justice, just would add that most importantly, I am your servant. And I strive to be that to all the communities King County serves, especially those communities who've been marginalized and who directly suffer the deleterious effects of hate and of bias, both institutionally and individually. We do this critical work together with you. So in this role, I myself, together with our Office of ESJ and a huge group of diverse specialists and practitioners all across King County government, are working diligently to try to lead the transformation that we all know is necessary for our communities to truly thrive now and into the future. I was asked to give a couple of comments, and I'm going to try to be brief today about the critical work that this coalition, the Coalition Against Hate and Bias, is doing. So first, quickly, a word about equity and social justice. I'm a pretty simplistic person, and to me, put simply, equity and social justice means having the opportunity to thrive no matter who you are or where you live. And I mean true and unhampered opportunity. We know for a fact that there are numerous determinants of equity, but I think they can all be captured in three small words that for me are the fundamental building blocks of opportunity. And that is power, peace, and prosperity. I think you can see that those three words encompass a lot. So we know that the truth is that many of us, Black and Brown and Indigenous communities and others, have been systematically denied these three fundamental building blocks. Again, power, peace, and prosperity. And thereby we have also been denied a true and unhampered opportunity to truly thrive. And we know why that is also. We know what is to blame. It is the same societal system established from our nation's founding, that the system that has devalued, it has dehumanized our Indigenous brothers and sisters. It is the same system that considered Black lives as property. It is the same system now that our white brothers and sisters are beginning to recognize what we have known for generations, which is that while it is so embedded into our society until to many it's been invisible, it is real, it is true, and it exists even today. Black and Indigenous people, all brothers and sisters of color, people with disabilities, our LGBTQ plus brothers and sisters and others, immigrant and refugee communities, people of faith, and all of us who have been othered and disenfranchised by this system have also been and continue to be, sadly, the subjects of acts of hate and bias. We've seen this most recently in our Asian and Pacific Islander communities. And we've seen the impacts of the harmful and racialized rhetoric against our Chinese community members, which continues to spew, sadly, from the highest levels of our government. All together making the work of this coalition extremely critical at this time. And so it is with these facts as our backdrop that I welcome you all to this webinar to learn about the Coalition Against Hate and Bias. This coalition is a body of trusted and proven community-based groups who have come together for the purpose of helping us to see, the purpose of modeling what community-based safety can look like and can be and what it can achieve. The work of this important coalition shows what it looks like to invest more in community for our safety and not solely in the traditional model of law enforcement. Our Equity and Social Justice Office, in closing, is proud to serve our coalition partners as they lead this work. Welcome again. And now I'd like to hand it over to Chris Bhang. He's a committed and brilliant member of King County's Office of Equity and Social Justice, and he's going to go more in depth about the coalition. I thank you all again for being here. I thank you for your commitment to equity and social justice and racial justice in all our communities. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Anita, and for your time and for sharing those powerful words. We really appreciate it. And to everyone else, welcome. Thank you so much for spending the end of your day with us to learn about the Coalition to Hate and Bias. I'm just going to give you all a quick overview about why the coalition was formed, what it does, how it works, and why it is working. So this is the need and the problem. A couple of years ago, the Seattle Times reported that there was a 400% increase in hate and bias crimes in the area. And we know that this is true because it's only been law enforcement that's been consistently collecting this kind of information. This is problematic because we know that many communities do not feel safe around law enforcement or government in general. And to think that people that are being harmed or being called names on the street or being spit on are going to go to officers with 9mm pistols and report their hate and bias, it simply is not realistic. And we know that there's been tons of underreporting. The second thing is that even if folks do call the police and do have those kind of relationships, we see that the nuance of hate and bias is often lost in the law enforcement system. So in this illustration to the left, you can see that there's this CAD, computer-aided dispatch, which answers your call when you call 911. It's directed to the right jurisdiction, and those jurisdictions have different laws. It might be a crime in one place, it might be a different crime in another, or it may not be a crime at all. Then it goes down to the actual investigation. If it is taken on for an investigation, it comes down to the officer writing the report, and it might be possibly classified as a hate crime. But we know that they're only collecting data on these things that are actually crimes, right? And it is not a crime to be a racist. It is not a crime to go into a store and call someone a racially charged slur. You can do that, unfortunately, and it is not a crime. And so even when you do call the police, what is the response that they're supposed to do legally? And so we know that data is a problem. And so, and not just is data a problem, but what do you do with that data? The policymakers have no real tools at their disposal to figure out what to do against hate and bias. In fact, the only tool that has been tried so far by government officials is to pass legislation to increase penalties for hate crimes or to make hate crimes a crime in general. Now that sounds all well and good, but in practice, we know that Black men are 5 times more likely to be charged with the same crimes as their white counterparts. We know that crimes are disproportionately enforced against communities of color and at harsher rates. And so we know that using the systems of law and punishment is not the answer. And so this is our proposed solution. This is the Coalition Against Hate and Bias. This is a community-led initiative that relies on community relationship and wisdom to draw on those relationships as a safe place of contact for people that have experienced some sort of racially or biased motivated experience. We're also being very clear that we are not the police. The coalition is not involved with any law enforcement agency or other government agency besides the Office of Equity and Social Justice. Even within the Office of Equity and Social Justice, all we're doing is hosting the data and supporting them. With the name Coalition Against Hate and Bias wasn't even formed until the coalition members voted on it. The third thing we're doing is that we're collecting helpful data. And this is the really exciting part for you, the data nerds out there, is that now that we know that we can use community groups to collect this information, we can figure out which groups are being targeted in which places, and kind of tie that into predictive analytics to really get ahead of those that would seek to harm our communities. And we're also, no social movement is complete without art and visibility. We thank Matthew Ekohawk Hayashi of the Headwater people for providing this really beautiful art to really show that it's true. If we do see ourselves as a community, whatever affects one of us will affect all of us. I'm just going to talk really briefly about this reporting network, and this is how it works. So say you have a community that's experiencing hate and bias, and they're probably already connected to some sort of community groups. And these are our community partners, communities A, B, and C. And they go to one of these places, maybe wanting to report hate, or maybe just wanting to get support for their families, for their schools, for their housing, any one of the many services our community partners provide. The community partner might say, hey, have you experienced hate and bias? And they're like, yes, I have. And they'll take the report. And this is not a tool where the public just goes and fills out a form. This is a tool where somebody with our community partners, helps walk them through this process and collects the data. Once the data is collected, it's sent to our office. And this is happening through the other community partners as well. And our office will share it with the public, stakeholders, policymakers, and back to the community partners to do whatever they need to do with it. But extracting data is not the only thing that we're hoping to do, right? Because these community partners are trusting the community and provide more services than just collecting data. And so by networking, we can really meet the needs of these people experiencing these horrible events. Sometimes the worst thing that they'll ever experience or have experienced in their life, to be called a name unbefitting for who they are, because of who they are. An example would be that we train up our partners to look for is if we meet somebody that is undocumented and we see that they have been the victim of an act of violence, our community partners should be thinking, they might be eligible for what's called a U visa, which prevents the government from deporting them. It gives certain immigration protections to them. And so we could refer them, for example, to the Northwest Immigrant Rights Projects. And from this experience of going to a trusted community partner, we're not just getting the data, we're giving something back, hopefully, as well. And this is the part of the presentation I didn't know I was going to give, but this is really exciting because the proof of concept of this method has been demonstrated in just 1 month. And let me tell you a little something about this. So we are starting to look at hate and bias crimes and incidents against certain race groups, right? And because of our funding was tied to COVID-19 and the emergent issues therein, we have a initial focus on Asian Pacific Islander and communities. With that in mind, let me show you this data from the Seattle Police Department's website. So this, in July of last year, you can see down at the non-criminal bias incidents, the things that we're trying to track, they collected 10 incidents. And only one of them was against a person of Asian descent or Asian descent. The Coalition Against Hate and Bias in just 1 month has collected close to 30 reports, most of them based on race and ethnicity. So one, we are collecting just as many, if not more, reports than the Seattle Police by proactive relational-based methods. And the other thing is that targeted outreach to communities works. Many of the first group of partners that we chose because of COVID-19 had deep roots to the Asian Pacific Islander communities. And when you do this kind of outreach, we've already got 14, which is more than the entire Seattle Police Department collected last year during the same time. And so we're really excited and proud of our partners for doing this work, and just goes to show how far relationships go in addressing these needs and combating hate and violence. If you do have questions and comments, this is the general email address you can reach us at, and we'll be happy to talk more. But I want to stop talking and hand it over to our community partners who are actually doing this work.
Good afternoon. I'm Michael Itti. I'm Executive Director of Chinese Information and Service Center, CISC, as I'll call it going forward. CISC was formed in 1972 by volunteers in the community who saw a need, where there are elders living in the Chinatown International District who weren't able to access services because of a language or cultural need. So those volunteers set up a table on the sidewalk, and over the 48 years we've been around, we've grown to support immigrants throughout King County. We have a team of 100 staff who speak Cantonese and Mandarin, Toisanese, Russian, Spanish, Vietnamese, and we also have programs. We partner with King County, City of Seattle, State of Washington, and King County Library System. We have a great Kaleidoscope Play and Learn that has languages including Somali and Ukrainian and other languages. And we have services that range from early childhood education, preschool, after-school programming. We help people connect to healthcare information, so if they have questions about Medicare or Medicaid. We have ESL and naturalization programs. And we have many programs that support older adults. So we serve nearly 2,000 older adults who speak Russian, Cantonese, and Mandarin throughout the county. We help them provide caregivers and other specialists so they can thrive in their own home. And CISC, we've been working with coalitions in the community for many decades. We're very active with the Asian Pacific Directors Coalition and the Asian Pacific Islander Coalition to advance equity and social justice. And if some of you know about Minority Executive Directors Coalition, APDC was a part of that for many decades. So the reason why this is important, and I think we've heard earlier, but I want to reemphasize, when COVID emerged during the winter, and before it really even arrived here in the state, we saw a rise in racism, hate, and bias against Chinese and Asian Americans due to COVID-19. And also we saw that Trump and his administration helped fuel that rise of the hate and bias. And so I'll try to share my screen here with just one. Okay, well, there was one image I wanted to show. Let me see if I can add that there. Yep, that's right. So this picture here, do you see it on the screen of what's on the window there?
Yep.
And that was an image that one of someone who reached out to CISC, and they said that in their apartment complex, someone had posted that up on the window. And as you can imagine, it was very hurtful to wake up every day, walk outside your own home, and see that on the window. And so, the community responded and helped them to address it. They contacted the police, but the police couldn't do anything. And so the community, responded and mentioned, there's a way for you to reach out to, if there's a homeowners association or someone who manages the complex. And as a result, that ended up being taken down. So we can take off that screen now, so we don't have to see that the whole time. But that's an example of some of the what's going on in the community. And so we're very fortunate that we have strong leadership here in our county. In February, Executive Constantine and Public Health Seattle King County leaders, joined with Asian Counseling Referral Service and hosted an event at their headquarters. And then CISC, International Community Health Services, and other community-based organizations joined to talk about at a press conference to denounce hate and bias that was being said by the administration in DC. And we're seeing reports from the Pew Research that Asian and Black Americans are more likely than any other group to report negative experience because of their race or ethnicity since the coronavirus outbreak. So we're very glad that this coalition has formed. We're committed to this work and appreciate the Office of Equity and Social Justice for their leadership. As we all know, COVID-19 is having a tremendous impact on the communities we serve. Hate and bias is adding to that stress and that challenge. And so we're committed to supporting the communities we serve. We have formed an internal committee of 10 staff, and they're meeting weekly to undergo training such as crisis intervention training, developing materials, and running through case scenarios, continuing learning as we're now able to provide support for the community in Cantonese, Mandarin, and also Spanish. And we are sending out next week, information to ethnic media about our ability to help the community report and refer them to resources and support them during these very challenging times. And it's also our intention as students return to school in the fall. We've already met with the superintendent of Seattle Public Schools and mentioned the importance of kids feeling safe when they return to school. And so we will be standing by ready to advocate and support our families as they bring their kids. We know online, but still online, there's many ways, of course, that we know that there can be harassment and intimidation and bullying through online methods. So we do need to make sure we're still continuing to advocate for safety when kids return to school this fall. And since the majority of our clients are immigrants and immigrants who are limited English proficient, it is important to have a network of community-based organizations who are able to provide the language as well as understand the lived experiences of the people that are contacting us. So we're grateful to be able to provide that support. And we really believe it's important to collect this data, as Chris showed in that slideshow beforehand, because we know that typically this kind of information is underreported. And so by having a network of trusted organizations, and it's great that we have such a great diversity of organizations to be able to reach out throughout the county and provide that, that network during these challenging times. And when we hear and see data in certain areas in King County, we can reach out to those city governments and say, we're seeing an increase in this area, or we're seeing an increase in this school district, we can advocate for those communities to think about ways and strategies to utilize communities and elected leaders to speak up, utilize the media to make sure that we reduce those instances of hate and bias and racism. So for CISC, since we started collecting reports 3 weeks ago, we've already received 4 incidents. And so we know that, we don't want to see a lot more, but we know that it's important, though, that a reporting tool is available. And so again, as I'm wrapping up here, I just want to say thank you, and we're grateful to be working together to support the community during these very challenging times.
Great, thank you, Michael. And I'm going to pass it back to Lydia with the United Indians of All Tribes Foundation.
Hello, community. Greetings. My apologies. I had technical difficulties. Hello, Miss Anita. Hello, Sang and Chris, Michael, Itti, our community that is on the line. My name is Lydia Faitalia. I am Samoan and Tongan, indigenous to the South Pacific. I thank you, Chris, for honoring our First Nations folks. And before I get into some of the details around our work, I'm going to let our team speak first. And I'm going to introduce you to Hio Delaronde, who is going to be speaking on his experience in tracking the data and inputting. So Hio.
Hey, hello, Lydia. Hello, everybody. Sego, what's going on? Hello, everyone. My name is Garunhio, and I'm indigenous to North America, from the Mohawk Nation in upstate New York. I work over at United Indians of All Tribes organization, and I serve the Native American, Pacific Islander, and Alaska Native communities. So during this work, I've noticed, yeah, a lot of different things that seem to affect all of our communities. Like Native communities, Pacific Islander communities. Yeah, we just don't feel like we're properly taken care of over here. Like our communities, we all treasure who we are and where we're from. We're all here in Seattle because of many different reasons. So some were already here, some were relocated here, forced here, and some moved here because their homeland was poisoned. And just from my experience so far, like everyone, we initially believe that the U.S. is here to help us, but we quickly learned that isn't so true. But yeah, that's just something that I noticed that's very similar between our Native communities, the Native American communities, and the Pacific Islander communities. And with the coalition against hate and bias, I just love what it is. It's to get everybody, the community, it's to show that there is community out there for us, that it's a trusted community, one that isn't led by someone who just wants to I just had that. I'm sorry. But yeah, the coalition, I'm very excited for it. But yeah, that's what I have to say. I had more to say, but my mind is going 100 miles an hour right now. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Hio. I appreciate you. I know you're delivering food to our families right now, and Hio's multitasking, and we are blessed to have him on the team. Next, I'm going to introduce our lead, Lelei Masina.
So I'm also contracted for the United Indians of All Tribes. Who am I? Um, I am native to the Pacific Islands of Samoa. And outside of that, I just wanted to reflect on whatever affects one affects all. Um, that's because as Indigenous people, we truly believe that organic relations matter. Anything that's forced is not organic. And relations in taking this survey truly matters with our communities because these are built on trust. And these are relationships that need to be communicated in a safe space. And in order to operate that safe space, we need to be mindful that taking these surveys, we actually have to, the first 14, that was a couple of the surveys that we did submit, I have to be honest that we haven't finished putting in the data because coming to a space of healing and looking like a reporter with a laptop was very impersonal. And we had to learn quickly that some of the spaces we had to create the environment. We had to make sure that they felt heard, that unpacking some of these things, they discovered that they had more scars. And in doing this unpacking, they realized that all they did was bandage and put a coat over it and kept it pushing. And to some point, they're crying about it while doing the survey. So it's very impersonal for me to be like, so what age group is the gentleman? So we really had to gauge quickly that data entry had to be some point more personal, more organic, because we're asking these people for the lived experience. We're asking them to reopen scars. And majority of these people, let's be honest, we're all mixed race. Majority of the students that I serve look Asian, but are Pacific Islanders, but are feeling both sides and feeling the pressure. And the same thing for my African Pacific Islander kids. They want to gauge these conversations, but they're so scarred to, now what? We've spoken to our counselor and we've spoken to the police, we've spoken to leaders, but where is the information going? And that's one of the things is the disadvantage of all this data. It's hard to get back to these folks that have reported, that went to these resources, that have been left out of the table, that had fought for scraps. And the reason why, as a Pacific Islander, I truly believe in navigating under United Indians of All Tribes is because we're Indigenous people, which it's hard for us to relate to different things, but as Indigenous people, we can relate it in a very organic level because we have a place that is our own. And we know coming here, we ride on so many scars and so many battles that was led by our African American community. But we are here as siblings and we wanted to share that this work is hard and it's not a true capture of what's happening out there. And data entry is completely different right now for us. And it's really, I think we have like more than 200 to report. And that's not even entered yet because we needed to be mindful that we can't just go there and extract their story. We have to make sure they're healing. We have to bring some medicine. We have to show we have to capture that we have intentions, and us as a coalition is going to bring all the progress, that we're going to make sure your story is not just told, but it's going to be utilized to inform policy. And that's one of the things we came under United Indians of All Tribes, and is because what better place to start a movement if not under one that was built on social justice? Mm-hmm. And that's why myself as a Pacific Islander, Indigenous to my lands, I feel that housing this data is critical, it is vital, but the experiences in itself, we have to be prepared because this is not even touching on the criminalization of our people. But at the same token, it's hard to gauge such a diverse umbrella because as Pacific Islanders, our children are built like man children. And they have that whole different, many layers of fear and anti-hate and bias that they had to wear it and kept it pushing. So I truly believe in this work. And I believe that the final ask to actually house all these very rich stories is funding. Because let's be honest, data driven, it's needed to inform policy, but so is funding, because the time in putting in this work matters. And it's a lot of layers, and asking for these stories, they want to know that they're going to be utilized. They want to know, is this just another reporting? But that's one of the things I wanted to share. Thank you, everyone. This is a beautiful platform, and I am proud to serve. And this is amazing and rich ground to actually grow seeds on. And thank you so much.
Thank you, team. I'm going to end it. United Indians of all tribes, we serve indigenous communities across the King County. We also serve Pacific Islanders across. We have no borders. We don't believe in that. That was all a Western concept.
Yes.
And so, you know, our org was born out of the movement with the four, and I'm smiling at Anita because she was formed out of the social justice movement with Bob Santos, Bernie Whitebear, right? So it's only right that we continue the work of those who came before us. Just a little synopsis, because I know we're up for time, of the work that our communities, our team has been doing. I've been training our team every week in regards to intersections, in regards to the communities, right? So with the Pacific Islanders, there are different island nations, and how do we approach it? Are they matriarchy? Are they patrilineal, right? We take all of that into consideration. If they're mixed with Black, is civil rights and indigenous rights included? With our Native brothers and sisters, are they federally recognized? Are they non-federally recognized? And what does that look like, right? And so our work, this work under our King County Coalition, and I would like to push our ask from United Indians to our King County folks, is we would like to push, and this is also from our community, that this data and this research is housed specifically under this coalition in protection of our BIPOC community. And I don't know how to stress that enough, and we will take it to the city and we will take it to government officials. If one thing comes out of our weekly meetings is there's a lot of trauma. There's not enough funding, which tells us that they still don't care about BIPOC community, and that's important to address. Another thing that my colleagues are telling me is that there's a lot of secondary trauma that can happen, and how do we prevent that, right? So we have built a framework that is indigenous, right? The methods and the approach is very different from what you would see being used across Western spaces. It's very organic, like Lei and Hio has mentioned before. It's very critical. It comes from a critical race lens. And when we're talking about indigenous, we're always pulling articles to update us on what is going on in our other communities. We also have to be true to the founding of this organization of United Indians of all tribes. And as an indigenous person to the South Pacific, I have to make sure that I honor our First Nations people here, our Coast Salish tribes, and all of the trauma. And one thing that Black youth, because we cater all of our BIPOC communities, it's not only limited to this indigenous population. We got to sit with a Black youth, and they said, "Auntie, I'm giving you a report, but stolen people on stolen land." Now, that is a lot to unpack for a youth, right? And then I have had to send reports to Sung and Chris and our team in regards to our Native elders being bullied, our Native and Black youth, the 900 that showed up at Shoreline last weekend, that was one of our United Indians supervisors' child. Right? So the continuation of criminalizing Black and brown bodies and our Asian folks about Kung Flu, I'm going to edit and let you know that we still have, as of today, Lei and Hio and BJ, who is tied up taking another report, have 225 reports that they need to put into the system. When we talk about framework, this is how it goes for United Indians of all tribes. We remove our laptops and we sit, and I want to stress this to King County. I get that you want us to enter in data and it takes us, you think it's 30 minutes. No, we're dealing with the intersections of trauma, colonization, racism, and then we have to take into their identity. And how do we address those issues that's culturally relevant? So the framework has to be culturally relevant. My ask today, my ask from our communities, BIPOC communities, our ask is that we house this data under King County Coalition, and that we need to hold them accountable like how they hold us accountable, right? There needs to be a safety, there needs to be some sort of, it's community led, but there needs to be some sort of accountability on both ends. And we, the King County Coalition, and our orgs that are here in our communities would like to make sure that when it comes to push and shove, that we are at the table. We are at the table with these politicians and with these lawmakers to make sure that we voice the concerns of our communities. So so thank you for having us. It is an honor, and I look forward to working alongside all of you. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much, Lydia and Michael, and sharing your stories. Really powerful, and just goes to illustrate how important your connections are to your community to have these really difficult conversations. You know, the scope of the magnitude of the work that you're doing, you know, can't be overstated. You guys are the pillar of the community, and we could not do this without you. And you know, we naively started as, hey, let's collect this data, and then we began to unpack all of this trauma and secondary trauma, and having these really difficult, nuanced conversations with each person that comes in through the door. And we want to be able to support you fully and provide the tools that you need to be able to do that, and work with you to learn from your medicine and your tools to be able to share that with the coalition. So right now, OESJ is in the second round of application reviews for the COVID-19 Community Response Fund. We are hoping to get some of those funds to bring on more partners to our work. And then there's supposed to be a third round that the details of that is still being worked out, but we hope to bring on more partners and be able to fully fund the current partners that are doing this work. I know you were locked out of the second round of funding due to some language in that. So yes, we hear you. We thank you so much for doing all the difficult, hard work that you're doing and putting yourselves through those conversations. You know, I was holding back tears right there, you know, having those conversations with your community and opening up those old wounds. And how do you have those type of conversations and support and hold them? And it's not about a data plot point. It's about the people and how do we support them better. So we hear you, and we want to do as much as we can within our power and change the power to continue to support you. So more details coming on the possible third round of funding to this community. Be sure to sign up for the Office of Equity and Social Justice newsletter. I'm sure the announcement would go out there. Or send us an email and we'll make sure that you get the information. But there is another option to become a partner without the application for funding. So many people in the community have expressed interest and their support for this project. they said that, you know, whether we get funded or not, we need to be at the table. We need to represent our community and be part of this work. And CISC is an example of that. And they do have an application in with us, and we're hoping to fund you for all the hard work you've been doing. But if there's organizations out there that you would like to become part of the King County Coalition against anti-hate and bias, against hate and bias, there is a light application process where it's a very short description of why you want to be involved in the work, and then the coalition will review them and decide to bring you on as a survey partner, or survey administrating partner. So please let us know if you're interested in that, and we hope to hear from you and welcome you. But we also want to fund the work, the hard work that you're doing. So we will have more details on future applications as well. We do have a website going up. We do have the artwork you saw earlier that is being printed in 17 languages right now. Thank you to the coalition for identifying the key languages of your community that you need these in. And those will be sent to your organizations hopefully next week for you to share out, and they'll be available online for downloading. This video will also be online, and we're gonna make a push to get this information out to our communities. So we're gonna go into the question and answer time. So I'd just like to thank everyone that has attended, and thank you so much for your time this afternoon. And we hope to hear from you, and thank you for doing all the hard work in the community.